I want to introduce you guys, if you don't already know, Alex Kemp. He's been with Cardinal for, gosh, how long? 10 years?
Yeah,
It feels like it.
Yeah, feels
9.
like it, yeah.
And Alex is here to talk about AI's role in healthcare analytics. So we talked a lot this morning. I think Jen on our CMO panel said the first thing she would do is hire someone in data analytics. And so Kemp is here to talk through everything, all the cool stuff we're doing. I'm gonna pass the floor over to him. He's got a presentation to show you guys all the cool stuff we're doing. And then I'll pop back in at the end of the session to close out day one. All you.
Awesome, thanks, Lauren. Cool, well, welcome everyone to AI's new role in healthcare analytics. So we're gonna talk today a lot about AI, kind of both from solving a problem solving the problem statement, how does that actually look like in practice, and how you can actually get started tomorrow with AI and healthcare analytics. So before we start, let's talk about what you're gonna learn today before the end of this presentation. So first off, we're gonna cover off why traditional analytics processes slow down decision-making in modern healthcare marketing. Then we'll talk about kind of the solution in which is, in AI, which is how is AI shifting analytics more from data collection to actual actionable intelligence. Then we get into how that's done, right, with AI. So the key ways that AI is improving efficiency through automation, prediction, and accessibility. Finally, we're going to look at some actual real-world examples and transformations that we're using with AI to kind of really streamline campaign management and all sorts of different things. And then finally, how marketers can prepare for a future where humans and AI work side by side. So that's going to be kind of the forward-looking next step section. So with that said, we can go ahead and get into the outline. Like I said, we're going to be covering off the problem first. When data grows, decisions slow. Then we're going to be looking into the shift, that is looking at more reporting from an intelligence engine from just reporting. We'll talk about the approach, which is how AI is actually changing workflows. And then, like I said, the proof, where we're actually going to be looking at real examples of how we're using this at Cardinal. And then finally, the road ahead, human plus AI collaboration. So let's get into it. So let's talk about the problem statement. When data grows, decisions slow. So there's this kind of what's the kind of backwards kind of idea where when you actually have more data, so marketers have more data than we've ever really had before. There's this paradox where we've had more data, but actually clarity is sometimes lower than ever. So you would think as you get more data and more insights, that means better decision making, but actually the lower clarity that you get from all of this kind of influx of data can lead to actually slower decision making. So every campaign, CRM platform adds another stream that you have to be paying attention to. And again, when you have all these different reports and they start multiplying, you're spending all this time trying to marry data together. Again, just going back to this paradox that we've had, this influx of data in the last few years, but now it's actually harder than ever to actually interpret that data. So when we look at healthcare specifically, the problem is kind of exasperated here, where due to healthcare's kind of inherent complexity, right? We have CRMs and EMR systems. We have, and you slap HIPAA compliance on top of all that. It makes it very difficult to use all of this data to its maximum potential. So healthcare marketers kind of have it specifically hard just because of how data is inherently different in the healthcare space. So the result of this, right, of more data, less clarity, basically leads to slower insights, and you lead to missed opportunities and inefficiency. So when your insights are lagging, your campaigns are going to be lagging as well, and you're always going to be kind of playing this game of catch up. So this is kind of the result of the problem that we have, and of all this data, less clarity, less ways of actually making sense of the data and interpreting it. So, like I said, the real problem isn't the data or the amount of data that we have, it's the interpretation of the data. And that's where AI kind of comes in and plays a role. So what we need as healthcare marketers is not another report or another dashboard. What we need is basically some help to make sense of all this data that we're ingesting. And like I said, that's where AI comes into play. So AI brings the speed and the structure required for that real-time intelligence, while we are monitoring the AI and also using the insights that we're getting from the interpretation of the data that we're getting from the AI. So again, the real problem isn't data, it's how we interpret the data. So let's talk about this shift from reporting to intelligence. So kind of historically, analytics has been thought of as reporting the past, what has happened already, collecting data and spitting it out for humans to interpret. But really what we're moving towards now, and especially here at Cardinal, obviously we have to have the reporting aspect of analytics. We have to be able to collect data and report on it. But it's more about a decision engine than it is you're reporting metrics that have already happened. So again, traditional reporting explains what happened. AI is talking about telling you what happened, why it happened, and what's going to happen next. And again, we move, analysts and media managers move from data producers to actual strategic advisors. So that's the goal here, is that we're moving from a reporting system to a decision-making engine from the insights that we're getting from the data. So I do want to kind of pause here, because I think whenever we talk about AI, there can be kind of an immediate flag that is raised up of like, well, at what point do marketers play a role, or how are we assisting? So something to be clear here is that AI is going to be handling, quote unquote, like the mundane, some of the more repeatable things that AI can replicate that humans do. And then humans are still serving as the decision maker and the final kind of oversight of the AI system. But this isn't just like turn it on, let it run, and all of your problems will be solved instantly. It really is about finding the right use cases of where automation and AI can assist, and then also keeping a very close eye on it to make sure it doesn't run out of your guardrails and the parameters that you put on it. So on this point here, just not robots aren't going to be replacing us all, but we are going to be working with them, I think, a lot more moving forward as it pertains to AI and analytics. So again, the future of analytics is not another report or another dashboard. It is a self-learning ecosystem. It is a system that can analyze data on its own, make decisions, even make optimizations in certain standpoints, and then also, again, shifting from what happened to why it happened, and here's what you can do about it. So it's always kind of forward-looking. It's not just the backwards-looking reporting kind of traditional definition of what analytics would be. Cool. So let's talk about the approach, how AI changes the game. So we're going to be talking about kind of more of the ways that AI can be leveraged. And then in the next section, we're going to be talking about specific examples with these specific ways we're going to cover of how we're leveraging it. So we're going to be covering 4 different kind of topics here. And these are kind of the broadest kind of buckets I could kind of think of as we're talking about using AI in healthcare marketing. So we're going to talk about AI agents, predictive analytics, propensity modeling, and conversational analytics. So those are kind of the 4 ways we're going to describe here in a second. And then we're going to go actually into more detail of how we're actually doing that here at Cardinal. So talking about AI agents, these are kind of all the rage right now. Everyone's talking about AI and AI agents. So I think it's kind of prudent here to talk about it here with healthcare marketing. So just to kind of define what we're talking about here with AI agents, the differentiation here with agents is that these are systems that can actually think, learn, and act versus, an automation might be defined as something that is, if A, then B, or, if A and B, then C, very repeatable kind of processes. This is actually where AI is actually making decisions on its own without you telling exactly how to handle the situation. So these can almost act as digital strategists, again, because they're not just doing what you told them to do. I mean, they are, right? But they're not doing if A, then B. You're giving it a goal, and it's acting as a human, just like an actual employee would, in terms of whatever it's being applied to. And I think that's the other big thing here with AI agents, is that the use cases with AI agents are pretty much unlimited. Again, we're going to talk about the specific use cases we're using, but you can really apply this to anything, so long as, right, you have the right data to feed into the AI agent. Obviously, like if you don't, it's kind of a non-starter there. But, and then also just the platforms and tools to actually facilitate some of that stuff. So we're going to talk about that later on in terms of how can you get started with AI agents. But this is just kind of a high level, how we're thinking about agents, and how we're able to make decisions faster and more real time versus leveraging more human-based types of optimizations and monitoring. Okay. So predictive analytics, this is a fancy way of saying forecasting, but essentially what we're doing here is turning data into foresight. So where AI is really used in this standpoint is kind of the machine learning aspect of forecasting. So being able to look at a historical data set and look at the relationship of advertising spend and whatever your outcome is, whether it be revenue or new patients, and then understanding, okay, when I spend more or less, what is that getting me from my revenue perspective? And also just that, how strong is that relationship? So by able to basically doing tons and tons of, thousands of iterations of these machine learning models that are basically learning off of the historical data, it's able to essentially put every channel for you on a curve in terms of, here's my revenue, here's my ad spend, and where am I currently on the curve with my current ad spend. So that is where you can really get into insights into your true, your cost per acquisition, your return on ad spend, return on investment, and again, being able to have a bit more confidence as you scale your budget, knowing what's going to be what you're going to get for that budget in return. So that's where AI kind of comes into play for predictive analytics and forecasting. All right, now we're going to talk about propensity modeling. So what this is essentially, and again, we'll show you exactly how this looks like in a real example, but this is essentially trying to better understand your patient base, based off of lots of different factors to understand which of those factors about that person, those characteristics, have the most influence on that person, let's say in this case, converting. So let's say you have Salesforce data, CRM data, and you can see all these different attributes about a given patient and then their actual status in Salesforce. So let's say they're a booked appointment or all the way to a shown appointment. You're basically able to, through machine learning and through AI, look at all these different data points and say, actually, age and gender are the most impactful factors about people, whether they will convert or not in this case. And when they are women, they are 30% more likely to convert. So it's basically just taking, it's trying to find patterns between people's characteristics and how they're actually interacting with your business, whether that's actually becoming a patient or becoming an appointment. And again, the idea here is that marketers can use those insights to refine their targeting in their campaigns, refine creative messaging if we know that certain messages might resonate more based off of what we're seeing from the propensity model. All of those being able to, the ultimate goal, be able to drive better outcomes at the end of the day. So again, propensity modeling is kind of about better understanding your audience and which attributes of those audience are most important to pay attention to. And then the last one here is conversational analytics. And this one's definitely kind of fun to talk about because it's at least it is for me. So beyond automation, so the other way we can really use AI is using agents to better understand our data through natural language processing. So what this means is, rather than having to go to a dashboard, usually people, when they go to a report or a dashboard, they have a question that they're trying to answer. Rather than having to go to that dashboard, go to the right page, filter for the right channels and locations, whatnot, conversational analytics allows you to basically just, like this says, making data speak your language. So you can ask it a language in plain English, and it can query that data set, understand the intent of your question, and then return the answer based off that data set And again, the idea here is speed to insight. The faster we can get our hands on the insight that we want from the data, the faster we can make decisions on it. So that is where conversational analytics can really help speed that up, is rather than having to, like I said, if you can just ask it a question of what was my most impactful location last month, and it can give you that question in seconds, that's, again, you can see where you can kind of run with that. So that is conversational analytics, making data speak your language. Cool. Let's talk about the proof. So what this actually looks like in practice. So we talked about the four kind of ways of how AI, and again, these are non-exhaustive ways, but the four ways that AI can play a role in healthcare analytics. Let's kind of walk through some real examples. So this is an AI agent that I'm going to try to kind of show you here. But one thing I'll say before we start here is all of these concepts are, it's hard to visualize what an AI agent actually looks like on paper. So this is kind of my attempt at that. But essentially what this is a real agent that we're using here at Cardinal. And what it does is it's a budget pacing agent. So it essentially looks at how much have you spent so far this month on a certain campaign or set of campaigns. And then it'll actually update your daily budgets for you per day in order for you to stay on track for that budget target. That is obviously kind of more of a if then that situation. But where this really gets kind of powerful is that we can, in the specific example that we're using search and performance max into a single budget. And we're allowing the agent to actually allocate the budget across search and performance max as it sees fit based off of the performance. And that is something you cannot do in Google Ads. You cannot have a shared budget for a mixed campaign type. So you can't have shared budgets for, search plus Vmax. So it's kind of a way for us to circumvent that and, actually allocate budget across those channels based off of performance. But again, you can see where this is just one example where you can really run with this and let it streamline and automate a lot of the things that you're doing on a daily basis from a budget pacing perspective. Here's another AI agent that we'll talk about is search term optimization and kind of analysis. So if anyone who's ever done paid search in their life, SQRs or search term reports are like some of the worst, worst parts about managing paid search, but that's where AI agents are kind of coming into play. So this is where they're actually scanning search term reports from Google Ads, understanding the intent of the search term, how relevant is that towards the keyword that it matched to or the ad group that it matched to? Is it a search term that we just would never want to bid on and that therefore let's negate it altogether? Or is it in fact that, there's a Botox query going into the wrong ad group and we need to add some ad group level negatives to kind of sculpt the traffic to make it go into the right ad group? There's lots of different ways we can use this, but the big thing here is that, for one, it's saving a lot of time with us not having to manually scan and go through search term reports. The other thing with this too is that we are approving all of these changes as well. It's not just running by itself and we're just letting it do its thing. We are really seeing what it's surfacing, approving what makes sense, not approving what doesn't make sense. And again, not only is the time savings of it, but also the savings of the media dollars, right? So if we're more reactive to how negatives are being applied to the account, then the more budget that can go to other high performing search terms. And we'll talk about one more agent before we talk about a few other examples, because I think agents are definitely, like I said, the use cases are endless. This one is about location budgeting. So we talked a lot about this in the last session I was on, but talking about aligning your spend with your capacity data. So what this agent does is essentially when you have your performance data and your capacity data married together, the agent can basically reference the capacity data, marry that with the performance data, and identify areas where we are potentially overspending in areas where we don't have capacity, or vice versa, underspending in places where we do have capacity. essentially allowing us to react in kind of more real time to capacity changes. And again, the agent is doing it right away as we approve it, versus us having to do this monthly or quarterly kind of exercise. So that's the location budgeting agent, kind of similar to the first one, but again, weaving in some external data with capacity to really drive it home. All right, predictive analytics. This is just some screenshots that we have from our MMM tools and forecasting tools, where we can essentially, like I said earlier, we're able to put a channel on a curve, so to speak, and say, when we spend this much, we usually get this many leads or this much revenue. And again, understanding what does that look like as we move up the curve. As we spend more, are we up more on the flatter part of the curve? Is there more, or is it more kind of a one-to-one relationship as we scale? And then understanding things like decay curves. So, at how long are certain channels effective before, the impact of that channel is really seen. This is where AI is, and machine learning is looking at daily level of spend, daily level of leads, and understanding the relationship between the two. Then we talk about propensity modeling. So this is a real example where we wanted to understand for a certain client how we could define a qualified landing page view. And what that is for us is just basically just a metric, an engagement metric that we want to be able to have that is indicative of someone that is going to convert later on. So what we wanted to do with that is actually, use data to answer that question. And what we found through propensity modeling with about 93% accuracy was that when users had 4 or more page views per session, they were 10% more likely to submit a form later on. So this is where we are using propensity modeling, understanding attributes about users, how they interacted with a website, and then the propensity of them converting down the line. And now conversational analytics, what we're looking at here is a real screenshot of basically a chat bot that we have in Cardinal dashboards here, where you can actually ask it questions. It can make visuals for you. In this case, I was asking about, how has cost per new patient booking changed over time, and which brands have contributed to that change. So you can ask it pretty complex questions, and it'll kind of report out a actual text-based response, and also the visual, which you can see there. And obviously you can see how this helps us, right? So being able to get to those insights faster, being embedded right in our dashboards, this is kind of a game changer for us, both for clients and for us internally. Okay, closing out here, talking about the road ahead and human and AI collaboration. So again, like we were talking about the next kind of a few slides back, this is not AI replacing humans. This is AI and humans collaborating. AI is very good at certain things. Humans are good at other things. AI needs to handle the mundane, the repeatable. It has the speed and the scale, the pattern recognition that humans don't have, but healthcare marketers will always still be playing a role in terms of, for one, monitoring AI, but also there are just some things that are just not there yet in terms of AI, in terms of sentiment analysis and creative and things like that. So again, it's going to be a collaboration in the next era, not a replacement. And now talking more specifically about building an AI-ready organization, here are just 3 kind of easy next steps for everyone as they're kind of walking away from this presentation. Strengthening your data foundations is going to be a really prerequisite to all of this. Making sure you have the data in the first place, but also the data in the right format. The whole idea of bad data equals bad decisions. All of that is kind of a prerequisite. Investing in the right platforms. We didn't really touch on this, but from a more practical standpoint, there are certain platforms that you would need in order to build AI agents and certain workflows like that we walk through. So obviously investing in those platforms will be important. And then finally, just keeping it simple in terms of, where do you start with AI? Start with your existing workflows, the ones that you already know how they work, the steps involved. Don't try to create from scratch or, try to reinvent the wheel. Just start with what you have and go from there. Cool. So to round it out here, just 2 key takeaways. AI accelerates insight. not noise. It helps marketers cut through the endless the data to focus on what drives growth and patient impact. Really, the best results come from human and machine collaboration, AI collaboration. Let the AI handle what it's good at. Let us handle what we're good at. And then with AI adoption, it's always just starting small, making sure you have the data, integrating it with your current workflows, and let it expand naturally.
I love the names. Gumloop.
Yes.
How do you even say that other one? N-A-N.
N8N. Yeah. N8N. It's not a great brand name, but
No, that's a hard
it's a
one
great
to,
tool.
what kind of domain do you get for that? Awesome. Alex, thanks for taking us through this. I know we're just at time. There's probably a lot of questions. We're going to come back tomorrow in the other session with Alex that I talked about earlier, thought was today, about incrementality. And so that rounds out today. Thanks for ending us on a high note. I know that's a fun topic everybody loves. We'll be posting all of this on demand and platform. I think even the sessions from this morning are already available. All the slides are available. So you guys can get this anytime. If you have colleagues, friends who didn't get to attend today, haven't registered, invite them to register for day 2. Registration is still open, but otherwise, we'll see you guys back here at 10 a.m. sharp for day 2 of Scaling Up. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.